All right, so we're back on Final Fantasy 16. What up, Russ? Practically here, and in case you missed it or honestly just forgot, I wouldn't blame you if you forgot, but the Rising Tide DLC for Final Fantasy 16 has been released. It is the last DLC content that is for this game, as far as we know. So this acts as kind of a send-off in a way. And right off the bat, this expansion seeks to answer questions and alleviate some of those complaints that have been plaguing the game since its release. It's a tad bit more content heavy than the previous DLC. It took me about maybe 8 hours to complete this game, and that's doing everything. I'm thinking about maybe 3 of those hours are probably tackling side content. And lastly, there are also several quality of life improvements that they added to this game. But does all that actually come together in the end? So the story here revolves around the lost icon, Leviathan, the giant ass flying water serpent, if you didn't know. Now, Leviathan was mentioned once in the main game, but that was it. There was no one knew where or what happened to it, besides that it just wasn't around anymore. Well, turns out it wasn't lost. It's been here the whole time. Inside this baby stuck in the middle of casting surf for like a century due to like freeze hacks. And trust me, that's not too much of an exaggeration. So this is where our crew comes in. Clive receives a mysterious letter for help and ends up journeying to a whole new region called Mysidia, which has been here the whole fucking time. Kind of crazy. Mysidia is kind of a secluded paradise compared to the rest of the world, due in large part to the giant barrier that's surrounding it. Because of that, it is spared from the gloomy sky that you have in the main game, at least at this point in the main game, the harsh weather that's going around. And most of all, the, I don't know, the bearer racism that's going on. I'm gonna say bearerism. That makes sense, right? I don't know. The inhabitants of this region are known as the Moats of Water, a tribe that was thought to be vanished or exterminated, lost to the world. Seems to be a trend. And while living here, they do the best with what they have and work together, not only out of necessity, but they also just have a sense of duty to do what they can regardless of, you know, where they come from. While some of them do journey outside of the village and the region itself, most of them are completely naive to the outside world. They're very cautious of it, and honestly, most of them are very scared of outsiders in general, which makes the interactions that Clive has with some of these individuals pretty endearing, as he slowly changes their outlook on the outside world.
I'm sorry, but I don't like it. Outsiders should stay on the outside.
After what their kind did to us. It's wrong.
That'll be them then. Don't look like much if you ask me.
I mean, I didn't say it worked for everybody. That's all background story stuff. Most of you people probably care about the gameplay. How has that changed this time around? The level cap has increased to 60 for normal plays and to 110 on Final Fantasy mode. Again, I played this on my normal save just to get through it. I wasn't really looking for a challenge like that. I just kind of wanted to play through the story for the most part. But it's still the Final Fantasy 16 that you remember. Every aspect of it that you can think of is pretty much the same. Whether that's good or bad to you, that's up for you to decide. I'm not gonna force you to think one way or the other. But I will say that they give you new powers, Leviathan, and also another set of powers that I'm not going to spoil here that are kind of cool as well. But the addition of the Leviathan abilities does add some variety to the combat that was sorely missing out of the previous DLC. Leviathan's powers are completely centered around ranged combat, which finally gives us another viable option in that category. Besides, you know, our little magic pea shooter. So it's different, it's faster, it looks cool, and most of all, it's really fun to use. I really liked using this set of powers. I had a lot of fun getting used to how they worked and mixing them in with the other abilities I'd already used to see, you know, how I really wanted to customize my loadouts. And it was also just refreshing to like be able to pull away from enemies and still be able to do damage, because normally you couldn't do much if you were not right in the enemy's face. Here you can actually separate yourself if you need to, yet and still be, you know, a threat in combat. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there were a couple of quality improvements that have been added to Final Fantasy 16. The first of which is ability sets. You can now save up to 5 sets of iconic loadouts. You can set them up in the menu and swap between them whenever you want, as long as you're not already in a battle. And it's also funny how I was complaining about this in Final Fantasy 7, and they literally do it here like a couple months later. It's funny how that works. Anyway, I feel like they added this for a specific mode that they put in the game. But I'll get to that a little later. Regardless, it was a welcome change. It was cool to see that. But me personally, I still kind of just found the abilities I like to use and just stuck with those throughout the whole playthrough. The only difference now is that I could save them to a new slot. But still, the same grievance kind of shows its ugly face again. There's no incentive to use one set of powers over another. The only way you're going to get the most out of this system still is just having a desire to be creative and experimental with the abilities in the game. Otherwise, you're just going to settle into a pattern and rock that throughout the whole entire playthrough. They've added enemies, but even still, they go down just as simple as before. Even the Tonberries. Oh my god, the Tonberries. They put a big emphasis on the Tonberries in this game, but even they don't really pose a threat.
Look at this dumb motherfucker. What's up? What's up? What's up?
You know, as long as they don't touch you. Although some of them have certainly been going to like Grudge Athletic Academy or something like that, because these are the most nimble motherfuckers I've ever seen. Oh my god. I mentioned that I think these ability sets were implemented for a specific reason. That reason being the Chyros Gate. This is a mode that's been added to the Redstone, if that's how you say it. I'm not sure. It's essentially this game's version of Bloody Palace from DMC. That's really the closest comparison I can honestly think of. In this mode, you have 20 floors to progress through. Every 5th floor culminates in like a boss fight, with the floors prior having waves of enemies that you need to battle through in order to progress further. You get 1 life, you go as far as you can until you either win or die. There are also permanent and temporary stat boosts that you can purchase as you progress through each floor. Depending on how well you do will determine how many points you are able to spend in between each floor. And I honestly found this pretty fun. I only intended to like maybe play 2 or 3 floors just to get like a feel for it. But that quickly turned into going through the entire thing for like the next hour and a half, 2 hours or something like that. Yeah, it was just, every time I beat a floor, it's just like, oh, I can just do one more. And it just kept going and going and going until I got to the very end. Now, it's definitely not hard to get through, although, spoiler, Barnabas is the last boss and he kind of, you know, wrecked my at the very end.
You suck.
Not too happy about that. And once you win like the initial rewards from it, there's not much to gain from doing it again. The attraction of this mode is really just attaining the high score and trying to figure out how you can optimize your iconic loadouts, your stat boost and purchases, as well as your score multipliers that enable you to get the better scores through each successive run that you do. You know, as long as you don't die. But yeah, that's really all that mode offers after your initial run of it. Again, it's still fun, but after the first time, there's not much else to it. All right, so the other quality of life feature that they added really has to deal with the questing. Now, for those of you that played this game, you all remember how exhausting the side questing could be in the main game, because you're running here, going back here, running back to somewhere else, talking to this person, talking to that person. And it was just a lot and it killed the pacing of the game. So they try to alleviate that by giving you a prompt to return to the quest giver at the end of a certain quest. It is a nice add. However, one, it's on a timer, so you're unable to like go do other things before you can warp back. I mean, you can, as long as they're like maybe in close proximity, but you have a limited time where you're able to like instantly warp back to the quest giver and complete the quest. And 2, again, it's at the end of the quest. So it doesn't really do anything to affect the traveling that you have to do while you're completing the different tasks within a quest. At least as far as I can tell with, you know, the limited quests they give you in this DLC, it only triggers when the quest is completed. So in that aspect, they're still somewhat of a slog. They still feel like MMO missions. You're still going to fight this or running to grab that. And even the dialogue isn't all that interesting, minus like a couple gems here and there. And coming off of Final Fantasy VII, it's really noticeable how bad the lip syncing is in these, I don't know what you'd call them, but these character to character dialogue interactions. where they're just standing there talking to each other. It is noticeably bad. It's like, yo, whatever AI they had for Final Fantasy VII, because even Remake I felt was better than this. So whatever AI they had for the lip flaps, I feel like the Final Fantasy VII team got the better software version, because this shit right here is just completely off.
Sorry, no can do. We're just passing through.
Please, I'm begging you.
Wait. Me?
I knew as soon as I saw your throwing star. From the moment I laid eyes on you and your weapon, I just had to make you my teacher. Please, train me in your warrior ways.
Oh, I don't know.
If you don't mind my asking.
It's not your asking, I mind. It's my explaining. But I don't see any other way around it. You see, when a baby is born here, we hold a ceremony to welcome them. The rite of immersion, we call it.
I find myself just staring at their lips the entire time as they're talking. Just like, oh boy. All right. Yeah, that's about it as far as this game. Like I said, I didn't want to spoil too much of this DLC in case you haven't played it and want to see what, see all the details for yourself. But in the end, again, I don't think this expansion is going to do anything for those of you that have already written off Final Fantasy 16. Everything they've added does make the game better. There's no denying that, but it doesn't reinvent the wheel of the gameplay in any way. The story does bring closure to a lot of loose threads that we have from the main game. And it is neat that this and Echoes of the Fallen tie together pretty nicely. There's definitely references to the other expansion in this one, but I do wonder how much of these expansions were actually planned, especially this one. Like Echoes of the Fallen, I can kind of give a pass because that wasn't one of the big selling points of the game. This one, the selling point was the giant icons, and Leviathan has been a pretty staple summon icon entity, whatever you want to call it. It's been a pretty big staple in this franchise for a while, and the fact that it wasn't in the main game still kind of baffles me a bit. The developers said that it was a plan to have Leviathan as the lost icon like pretty early in development, and added as DLC later, but my question is still like, why? Because it also seems like they weren't sure if they're going to be able to do DLC, and they've made a point that, Final Fantasy 3, where summons were introduced, that's why you see the summons or icons that you see in this game, because they were all introduced in that game, Leviathan being one of them. So it's just like, I don't know, it just seems kind of weird to me. Like, they also said that it wasn't finished DLC, that was cut or saved for later, it wasn't anything like that. So I'm just like, other than like, just saving something to make money off of it later, which I feel like is more of the publisher than it would be the developers. But still, part of me just thinks that maybe they just didn't know what they wanted to do quite yet. Or if they did, it just wasn't working how they wanted it to. Or maybe they just were like figuring out how the hell they were going to make it work. So they just put it on the back burner for later. And they just said, okay, he's lost until we figure out how to make him work. But I don't know. That's my thoughts on it. If you guys know anything different out there, let me know. If there's an article that I can read that like shines better light on the situation, because I've just read the Destructoid article, I believe, that had the one interview. I would like to, I'm curious as to why they decided to like keep him out of the main game, or just to call him lost for whatever, for what, why did he have to be lost? Why do we need a lost icon? Why? I don't know. But regardless, we got it in the end, and I was definitely more satisfied with this expansion as compared to Echoes. This just definitely had a lot more to dive into. And honestly, it might be a little bit because it felt refreshing to come back to this game after the marathon that was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This game was a nice change of pace compared to that game, because oh my goodness, I almost feel like I had like gaming withdrawals or something. I don't know. Those are my thoughts on the Rising Tide DLC. Is this really the end for Final Fantasy 16? Who knows? We could honestly see more stuff if they decide to bring some more later on. But as of right now, this is it. And I still feel like it ends on a pretty strong note, honestly. If you played this DLC, what'd you think of it? How'd you like the new powers? What'd you think of how they went with the story? Did it match with your theories? I know a lot of you had theories out there. A lot of you did. So did it match with your theories, or were you proven completely wrong? I'm curious. I'm really curious because a lot of people were wrong because I read those theories. If you like this video and want to see more like this, feel free to subscribe, like, and share the video. You can follow me on all my social media links. There'll be links to that in the description below. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'm Russ, practically out. Later.